Okay. Hey. Wow. Hello from Tucson, Arizona, world headquarters for the Jazz Video Guy. That would be me. Yeah. I want to welcome you to the first of a bunch of live things I'm going to do here on my Jazz Video Guy channel. I want to reach out to my worldwide listeners, viewers, friends, perhaps some enemies. I don't have too many enemies. I have a few. If not for this music, I don't know how I'd make it through this period. I mean, this music has helped me so many times in my life through difficult times. And this is certainly one of them. This is a difficult time for people all over the planet. So, I'm just checking to see if I'm live here and my audio is working. Yeah.
Just checking.
Okay, I got another computer here. So I'm going to do these daily chats with you. I'm very curious what you have to say. Yeah, I'm the Jazz Video Guy at the Woo in the World. Okay, at the Woo in the World. Thank you. Hi, Penny. Unfortunately, we have lost a lot of musicians. Well, this is life. We lose people all the time. But in recent times, we've lost Wallace Roney, who's a fantastic trumpet player, Miles Davis, enthusiast, played with Art Blakey and Tony Williams and his late wife, Jerry Allen. We were sorry to lose Wallace. It's an important trumpet voice. We also lost Bucky Pizzarelli. Bucky was in his early 90s, but fantastic guitarist for many years. Wonderful man, father of John Pizzarelli. The other day we lost Ellis Marsalis, father of Wynton and Wynton, Branford, Jason, and Delphio. Yeah. Oh, wow. Demetrius, hello. Hello from Greece. Hello to my friends in Greece. I love your food. I love your music. I love your culture. One day I will come and visit you. I don't know when that day will be, but Penny saw Brandon recently. You mean Branford, I think. Branford Marsalis. Yes, great band that went for Marsalis. Wanford? I combined his names, Winton and okay. Take two. Hello, I'm Brett Premack. I'm the no, just kidding here. Let's see, who else have we lost? We lost a great pianist, Mike Longo, who played with Dizzy, worked very closely with Dizzy, and he was also a member of the Baha'i Faith, which Dizzy was part of. Wonderful organization, the Baha'i Faith. I note that I put the wrong title on here. It says Jazz Video Guy Daily Update November 5th, 2020. I guess I'm an optimist. I think there will be a November. Right now, everything is like, I feel like in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I don't know how to wake up and get out of this. Every morning I wake up, what day is today? It takes me like a few minutes to just figure out, oh yeah, this, right now, hey. Because everything has changed so much. Hopefully, when we get to the other side of this, there'll be some positive from it. But right now, it's mainly all bad. I am definitely keeping safe, Paul, in the UK. Hello, Jamian. I am not based in New York City. I'm based in Tucson, Arizona. I lived most of my life in New York City. And miss New York City a lot, but I moved out here about 20 years ago. It's worked out very well. I have a great life here. Not much jazz here, though, so it's one of the reasons I became the Jazz Video Guy, to put more jazz on the web. I'm very honored to do what I do. I started as Jazz Video Guy in March of 2006. Here it is 14 years later. No, I wasn't able to go to the Jazz Congress this year, which is a fantastic event because I'm working on another project outside of jazz and needed to stay close to home. Tautur Pawn. I would imagine you are from Indonesia or Thailand or one of those places. So there's more videos coming. I got about 2,100 videos up here. Because I'm here in Tucson, I don't produce that many videos myself. But I do have an incredible archive, and people share videos with me. Thankfully, jazz was celebrated and broadcast on European and Japanese TV in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And luckily, I can pull from some of that and put some video up here from that period of some of my friends who are no longer with us. People like Mulgrew Miller and John Hicks, and unfortunately, the list grows here. Hello, Plainfield, New Jersey. Yes, I deal with copyright issues. Sorry about that. If I do receive copyright notices, and sometimes it just involves sharing in the revenue, the 15 or 20 cents of the video, the income the videos produce. I have no problem with that. In the old days, you'd get a copyright strike, which means 3 of those in your channel would be taken off. Now people aren't so uptight, but certainly I make a point of removing videos. I got a friend of mine who shall go nameless. I put up some music. He didn't like the way he sounded. He said, please take it off. I said, okay, I will, no problem. Plenty of other videos. Got some hay fever here. I just didn't do some coke. I don't do coke. Hey, Brazil, wow. I am a tremendous fan of Brazilian music. I've been very lucky to see Milton Nascimento, Djavan, who else have I seen? Ivan Lins, I've seen many times. Airto, Flora. I even saw, I forgot his name. This is one of the problems with aging. Sometimes you forget that the name or the word is there, and then it's like a file that won't open. But hey, Hermeto, thank you. Incredible musician, Hermeto Pascoal. I hope to visit Brazil one day. I don't like the leader, but I don't like the leaders of most countries. I love people. I don't like governments. I don't like institutions. I think man is an incredible creature, but it's his institutions, his governments that bring us all kinds of problems. I won't get into that right now. I made a little video the other day to ask people to either make a video and I would post it, or just list some of the things that, are helping you to survive during these crazy times. Because I said, well, not that. As I said at the top of this, this music is really fantastic. And it nourishes me, it rescues me, it inspires me. It always has since I was a kid. So I'm going to read here some of the music that people have mentioned that they are listening to during this time. And also, I'm going to I'll isolate some of these things, and I'll put together a playlist, and I'll share it with you so we can all see and listen to what people are checking out. Virginia, El Pinon. I don't know where you're from, Virginia, but you have listed here. I need to turn this off. Multiple technology here. Okay, she lists John Coltrane at the top of her list, and he's certainly at the top of my list as well. And she mentions a favorite of mine from the 60s, from the mid-60s, John Handy, Spanish Lady. John Handy created quite a sensation when he played at the Monterey Jazz Festival in 1966. Trying to think of it was a quintet. He had Terry Clark on drums. I forget the bass player. I'll have to go back and check it out. Gato, yes, I'm a huge Gato. I was very lucky to hear Gato live back in the early 70s when he played with Lonnie Liston Smith. Incredible band. Anyway, John Handy, Spanish Lady. When that record came out, it was each side had one track. I think it was For All We Know and Spanish Lady. I think Sonny Greenwich was the guitarist. But John Handy's a great player. Played with Mingus. Still with us, I believe, in the San Francisco Bay Area. Virginia's also listening to Marvin Gaye. Oh boy, I've been listening to Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder are two of my favorites. Have been for years. Marvin unfortunately left us much too soon. He led a troubled life. He also did the score for one of my favorite films, Trouble Man. Not my favorite films, but I think Curtis Mayfield's score for Superfly and Marvin Gaye's score for Trouble Man are two of the best scores that film scores that I've heard from musicians. Let's show over to JC, who tells us that he listens to hard bop. Art Blakey, Lee Morgan, Kenny Durham, John Coltrane, Jackie McLean, Bud Powell. Yeah, those are the cats. I've been listening to them too. I just finally caught up with that the Lee Morgan movie. They called, pardon me for fucking up the title. They called him Morgan, or I called him Morgan. A movie that was hard for me to get to and watch because of the tragedy of Lee Morgan's life. Lee Morgan was one of the first musicians that I started listening to. My friend Mark Kaplan and I used to, after school, after junior high school, we'd go and we'd eat cold potato knishes and listen to Blue Note records. And the Sidewinder was one of the first records I got into as a young trumpeter. First record that really pulled me into jazz, especially that track Totem Pole. As fate would have it, so that was in the mid '60s. Less than 10 years later, I heard Lee Morgan live at Slugs. I guess about a year before his untimely passing. I've been trying to find recordings for Donnie Fagerquist. Oh, I have one Donnie Fagerquist record. I'll have to mention it in tomorrow's broadcast. Anything that I mess up today, I'll come back. These broadcasts are, by the way, going to be at noon every day for an hour. Noon my time, which is PST. That would be 3 p.m. New York time. I guess it's about 10 p.m. in Moscow. I am a student at a university studying jazz, trumpet, and piano. Well, great. That's a wonderful thing to study. A bit hard to find work doing this, but people who are like driven to play this music and to create, somehow we find a way to survive. And we're going to have to find some new ways as the end of this nightmare approaches, no time soon, but it will end. Tremendous reordering of many things, like restaurants going out of business, clubs. It's going to be a while before people are willing to go out into large groups. They will again after a vaccine is developed. Until then, I think people are going to be a bit wary. I certainly hope that Smalls will be okay because I live on the nightly webcasts that Spike Wildner gives us from Smalls and from Mesro and other places as well. Hopefully we'll do webcasts. You know, I think like when those early webcasts first started, especially at Smalls, it was like every night. People said, why go to the club? When you see it, you can see it online. Well, as it turns out, those live webcasts made more people want to go to the club because they brought Smalls into the home of jazz listeners all over the world, jazz fans. And Spike told me that when people get to New York City from Europe or Japan or South America, as soon as they get off the plane, they're headed to Smalls. So I really hope that that continues. It's very difficult in New York City because of the real estate situation. I love Chris Potter. I don't know Bob Reynolds. I know Chris. I met Chris in the 90s when he first started playing with Red Rodney. In fact, I have a video or had a video on my channel of a young Chris Potter playing with Red Rodney. Chris is a fantastic player. and a wonderful man. And great things with Dave Holland that he's done. He's played with a lot of people. I mean, he's certainly one of the leading tenor saxophonists and musicians of his generation. Bob Reynolds, I don't know. One of the problems that I have living in Tucson, Arizona, I'm not into some of the newer artists. There's no shortage of jazz, even though I live in a small town. Brad Good. Yes, I know Brad Good, of course. I live where there's no jazz, so Smalls has been a lifeline. Yeah, Smalls is absolutely essential. I love Smalls live webcasts. What was I saying before that? Oh, it got lost. These stream of consciousness things sometimes take us, and I forget where I'm going. I'll look at this later and clean it up a bit, perhaps. Back to the favorites of some of the people who watch my channel. Frankie Midnight. That's kind of a dramatic name. It's kind of like film noir, detective. I guess he would be a detective. Frankie Midnight. Yeah. He likes Jacob Collier's Optimum Music Feast playlist on Spotify. Yeah, I'm a big Jacob Collier fan. If you haven't seen his work, he is a remarkable, talented man who plays instruments, arranges, produces. He does music videos where he plays all the instruments and has guests. He also edits his videos. And for what people tell me, he's very, very good live as well. Jacob Collier looks to be in his early 20s. One of those amazing talents. Bert Schmidt. We like jazz. Yes. Staying the fuck at home in The Hague, the Netherlands. I'm 62 and scared this would kill me. Music helps a lot. I'm sure many of us have wondered, is this going to get me? Am I going to die? Well, some people are going to die. Some people are going to get. We're trying to stay safe, but we never know what's coming in this life. I mean, I had cancer a couple of years ago, unexpectedly. I had a physical, and the doctor said, "Gee, your PSA score is kind of high." Went to urologist. Oh, you have cancer. Oh, I have cancer. Wow. Okay, I didn't plan on that, but I got through it. I survived it. It's in remission. It's gone. Thanks to medical technology, when it's used properly, when people get a chance to use it, I was able to beat cancer. I have a friend who's a Holocaust survivor. He's 88 years old. He survived as an 8-year-old boy. He worked in forced labor camps in Poland. And then he was for a couple of years, and then he was in the Buchenwald concentration camp. And I talked to him the other day, and he said to me, if I survived the Holocaust, I know that I can survive this. So a positive attitude goes a long way towards finding a way to survive in these times. Sometimes it's hard to maintain that positive attitude, but something we have to draw upon. We've got to draw upon every ounce of strength that we have. And also our families, our loved ones, being connected, people that we care about. A lot of people are reaching out now, like I'm reaching out to you. Let's see. Oh, the Netherlands, yes. Bert mentioned that he's in The Hague. I've always thought the Netherlands is one of the coolest places. I was lucky to go, it was 97. I went to the North Sea Jazz Festival when I was running Jazz Central Station. It was the first major jazz website back at the beginning of the internet. And I saw so many great people that year. I saw the New Standards Band with Herbie and Michael Brecker and John Schofield and Jack DeJohnette. That was fantastic. And Earth, Wind and Fire. North Sea Jazz Festival, one of the great jazz events that I highly recommend. Okay, let's see. Philip Shropshire says the Jacko cover of Continuum is transcendent. Watch Schofield, Majeski, Martin, and Murphy. Bandemic. I don't know that. Something else called 16 Blues. And then another one, Charles Lloyd, Masters of War. I'm a huge Charles Lloyd fan. Going back to the 1968, 66 Monterey Jazz Festival. That's where the Charles Lloyd Quartet recorded Forest Flower. And that came out a few months later on Atlantic Records, and that's the first time I heard Keith Jarrett, whose piano solo on Forest Flower Sunrise just, you hear certain recordings and the solo just, who is that? It jumps out at you. Like the first time I heard Michael Brecker on Gregory Is Here. Thank you, Joanne Brackeen. Yes, Joanne is a wonderful person and a great musician. I don't think I have any videos of her. I've never heard Jan Garbarek live. I've, of course, heard him and speaking of Keith Jarrett, love the stuff he did with Jarrett. I'm going to have to get my glasses here. Another aspect to the aging process is that your vision changes. Mansour Brown is one of my favorite recent finds. Geez, I don't know him, Desmond. I'd like to check it out. So I was saying before that I recommend Polish jazz. Yeah, when I was writing for Downbeat in the 70s, I once did an interview with Zbigniew Namysłowski, Yusef Deyes. So I get my musical suggestions from my I don't say my fans. Well, I guess I do have fans, listeners, but we have access to such an incredible amount of content on the web. It's mind-blowing. I mean, just on YouTube, so many. Hold on, Vincent. I'll give you my Keith Jarrett story in a second. So many great sources for music on the web here. It's just unbelievable. Okay, Keith Jarrett Quartet. Yes, I became a Keith Jarrett fan when I saw him with Charles Lloyd, when I heard Forest Flower, and then I saw them in 67 at the Village Theater, and then I saw him a couple more times, and then Jarrett left, and he joined Miles Davis, Miles Davis's Electric Band. Entirely different thing, but at the same time that's when he started his solo music, and he formed his American Quartet. And that was an incredible band. I heard them at Slugs around the time Lee Morgan was shot. And thank you, Jazz Fan One. And so that was Dewey Redman, Charlie Hayden, and Paul Motion. I always screw up his name. And the music was electrifying. And I brought a friend with me that night who wasn't a jazz fan, someone who was just into rock. He just wanted to come along. He had no idea what it was. The music was so electrifying, it reached out and grabbed him, and he got it, and he became a Keith Jarrett fan after that. I've seen that happen. Once I interviewed Mulgrew Miller, one of my interviews here you could find. He talked about how he's seen the power of the music, how even people who are not into the music, in the right situation, when they hear it live, it'll just reach them in an incredible way. So I'm a very lucky man, to have seen the music that I've seen live and known the musicians that I knew and still know. Motian, Paul Motian. I'm sorry. He was a funny guy. Expectations, Neil. I also like that as well. Interesting story with Jarrett about the Colon concert, which became Sonny's okay. Sonny's surviving. Sonny's a survivor. Keith Jarrett Keith Jarrett has some kind of medical issues. He's not playing with us. But let me briefly. I'll tell the story about the Keith Jarrett Colon concert. How that concert came about. A young German jazz fan, a young woman, a teenager, somehow wrote to him, was able to put it together, but did not supervise which piano was going to be in the hall that night. And when Keith got there for the dress rehearsal, Manfred Eicher from ECM Records was with him, and they were going to record that night just because they wanted to start to get some stuff on recording. The piano was like horrible. I mean, Keith Jarrett played for a while and then walked away. And you said, I'm not going to play. That's it. You're going to have to cancel the concert. And he absolutely hated the piano. So he went outside and he sat in a car. And this young girl who somehow produced this concert, went over to him and she was crying and she begged him, please. Yes, I know Leonard Maltin. I went to NYU Film School. He was one of my fellow students there. This girl begged him, please, please, I've worked all my life for this, short life, 18 years. Please, please play. And he just looked at her and said, okay, just for you. Now, Keith Jarrett's kind of a temperamental, difficult guy, but that night, something in that young woman spoke to him. He went on the stage. He took a half-assed piano, barely in tune, and he just brought his mojo and produced one of the great solo piano concerts and somehow made that piano sound great. He rose to the moment, and that can happen. Let's see. Sergei Stakuka. I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. I listened to a lot of Coltrane Stit with Oscar Peterson. Yeah. Dexter Gordon, Our Man in Paris. Oh, yeah, I love that track. In fact, Bud Powell's on that recording. And that has, is that Tanya's on that? The girl, I love when Dexter plays that, Tanya. Cannonball Adderley, something else with Miles and Hank Jones. Certainly Cannonball, one of the greats. His music still resides on me. Can you imagine that band? Miles Davis, Cannonball Adderley, Bill Evans, John Coltrane, Paul Chambers, Jimmy Cobb. Oh my God. You know, didn't know Miles. I met Miles once at a boxing competition in Queens, but I saw him a number of times, and unique individual. You could look at my video, The Picasso of Jazz. Only one Miles. Mark Turner, Sergey mentions. Yeah, Mark Turner's a great player. Ahmad Jamal from Santa Faster. Know What I Mean. Oh yeah, Bill Evans and Cannonball Adderley. Whoa. I also like Cannonball live in New York. Didn't meet Duke Ellington. Got a chance to see him live though. He came to my high school when I was 14. That's many, many years ago. Left a big impression on me. Very, very cool guy. I was lucky to meet Yusef Lateef. Also saw him in person many times. Very unique spiritual guy. After he passed, I did a hangout with some musicians that played with him. You could check that out on the channel. And yes, I love the guitarist Kurt Rosenwinkel. Ahmad Jamal, Max Roach story. Oh, you want to hear a Max Roach story? Oh boy. Let me see if I can remember it now. Sonny Rollins told me the story. I'm gonna have to wait till tomorrow. I got it. You know, I think it's somewhere on the channel here. I'll have to look for it. It's a good story. Something that I'll remember to tell tomorrow. Joe Henderson. I was talking before about how Lee Morgan, the Sidewinder, was one of my early favorites, and then I got to see him live, and then I got to know Joe Henderson because in the '90s, I started writing for jazz magazines in the '70s, but in the '90s, my cousins have a record label called Chesky Records, and they are an audiophile label. They record always in the best situations, the best audio situations, and so they invited me to do the liner notes on a recording that ended up being called New York Reunion, and it was Joe Henderson and McCoy Tyner, Ron Carter, and Al Foster. So I spent a couple of days in the studio with them, which was a fantastic experience. McCoy, wow. What a presence, what a force. Deep, deep. And Joe Henderson. A funny thing happened when they were in the studio between tunes. McCoy was at the keyboard, and he was like thumbing through the real book, looking for something to play. And Joe Henderson was like looking over his shoulder. He said, "Wait, that's my tune," and it was Recordame. And then the McCoy was like flipping the pages, and He said, here's one of mine, Contemplation. So Joe Henderson, and then I did an interview, a joint interview with Joe Henderson and John Schofield. That's available. That's when I first got my first high 8 camcorder, and I recorded that. It's one of the first things I did. You can also find that here on the channel. Joe Henderson is a very intelligent guy, very deep thinker, and I go back to his music a lot. I love his early stuff on Blue Note and his later stuff as well. Let's see, Black Narcissus, also a wonderful recording. Michael Harris says, Herbie Hancock Maiden Voyage always helps with stress. Yeah, JC, I don't have any KD stories. I wish I did. I was a very close friend with Walter Bishop Jr., and he was close with KD and told me about him. And also my friend Jimmy Heath, who passed recently, was also close to Kenny. Unfortunately, many people don't know about Kenny. Certainly Kenny Dorham, one of the great ballad players. So Herbie Hancock, Maiden Voyage. Oh yeah, I mean, I've been listening to that since it came out. I think Herbie was 23 or 24 when he wrote that. It was a magical recording, and I've heard him play it live many times with different bands. Fantastic. Let's see here. More. Cosino, Cosmo. Oh, thank you, JC. Jimmy Heath was one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. I'm very grateful to have known him and been able to do that documentary film. And my Anthony Braxton story. Well, here's one I remember. Okay, I'll have to get back to the list. So we go back to, I guess it's either 70 or 71. Keith Jarrett has joined the Miles Davis band. Now I saw Miles Davis did a recording live at Fillmore. He played for the Fillmore for 4 nights. He opened for Laura Nyro, who's was a fantastic writer and singer. So Miles played, and then she played, and they did that over 4 nights. And then Tio Macero chopped it up, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, different nights. I was there the Thursday. I think I was there Thursday night. So I had seen Miles. The first time I had seen Miles in person actually was about a year before that. It was right before Wayne left the band. It was Wayne and Chick, Dave Holland, and Jack. And of course, they blew my mind. It was fantastic. And so here it is a year later. Suddenly, a lot was happening because Miles had come out with In a Silent Way. And, the whole jazz thing was changing. Hey, Dave Frank is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Dave Frank is in the house. So we were excited, Weather Report, all those things were happening. And so Miles at the Fillmore, who was going to play? So the curtain goes up, one side of the stage, Keith Jarrett on Farfisa organ, other side of the stage, Chick Corea on electric piano, Airto, Dave Holland, Jack DeJohnette, and Steve Grossman was a sax player at that time. Wow. You can listen to the recording and check it out. I guess about a year later, Miles played a gig at the Cafe A Go-Go with the new band. Chick left a couple of gigs after that. You're right, Vincent. Weather Report didn't happen until after that, but not long after that. Keith joined the band, and then Grossman left. Gary Bartz joined the band, and Chick left as well. So that band was Miles, Gary Bartz, Keith Jarrett, Michael Henderson, Jack DeJohnette, and Airto. So, as it was 1970 or 71, something I used to do in those days, I took some LSD. Oh my God, yes, it's true. I've dropped acid a few times in my life. Went to the club that night. As fate would have it, at the Cafe A Go-Go that night, Richard Pryor opened for Miles. Whoa! Unbelievable. I mean, he was like disgustingly filthy but funny, and the music, of course, was just incredible. I mean, I'm not very good at describing music. I've never been a critic per se. It has such an effect on me. Words fail me. So tripping my brains out. Was with a friend of mine at the time, and so we saw a set that same night. It was a Tuesday night. Chick Corea's new band was opening at the Vanguard. That was Circle, the band he had with Anthony Braxton, uh, Dave Holland, and Barry Atchell. Now, if you ever listened to Chick's music at that time, Circle was the band, and it was totally outside, totally different than what Chick had been doing with Miles. Chick was on In a Silent Way, Bitches Brew. I mean, he was part of that whole electric thing. So Braxton was also a recognized explorer in the avant-garde medium. So I went down to the Vanguard and I heard Circle, and they were most definitely free as it can get. And some of you may have been to the Vanguard, perhaps some of you not, but it's a basement club. You have to walk down a series of steps to get to the front door. You're greeted by a doorman, and then if you get in, not too crowded, you sit down. I guess it seats about 75, 80 people. Very intimate place, incredible vibes in there. So I'm sitting there tripping after digesting Miles. Now I'm into this avant-garde thing. They stop between numbers. A woman comes down the stairs, a matronly woman, I don't know, looked to be in her 70s. And she peeped her head in. I forget who was on the door that night. I don't know. And it was a bartender, I can't think of his name. And she said, "Is it very avant-garde?" And just as she said that, Braxton broke into one of his, and his like veins were popping out. Of course, because I was I was hallucinating on acid, his whole thing and the music hooked up to the pipes on the ceiling. Meanwhile, the woman heard two notes. She was out of there. That was a great night. Unforgettable. I'm so lucky to have many musical nights like that. Let's see, J.C. Warner. Check out Leon Ware's album Rainbow Dew and the YouTube song Sigh. John in Phoenix. Hello, John. Hello, Neil. John is up the road there. Yes, Leon Ware. Not really a jazz musician per se, although he started in jazz from Detroit. Wonderful man. He wrote one of the Marvin Gaye recordings. Worked with Quincy Jones. I got a chance to interview. I did a Ray Charles podcast series for Concord Records about 11 years ago. You want to know more about my psychedelics? I'll save that for tomorrow. Something to look forward to. What was I talking about here? Going in too many different directions. I apologize. Leon Ware. Yeah, Leon Ware was a great. My Ray Charles podcast series. Yeah, I know Sephora. I screwed up the date. I'm going to check that. Oh, maybe this is the future. I hope there is a future. There's got to be a future. There's a future for some of us. Joe Zawinul. Wow. Joe Zawinul is an incredible musician. I saw him a bunch of times. Man, I saw him with Cannonball. I heard him when the first time Weather Report played in New York at the Cafe Agogo when Miroslav Vitus was still in the band with Alphonse Mouzon on drums. I heard Weather Report a bunch of times, including with Jaco. And then I saw Weather Report. I saw Zawinul's own band in person a number of times, most notably at the Yoshi's. At the Yoshi's, also at Blue Note in New York, where I sat near the stage and watched him with an interview with Joe, a bit of which is on the channel here when I was at Jazz Central Station. A fascinating man, Joe Zawinul, incredible musician, very strong ego, but that's cool. But survivor of World War II, and he was just a kid in Austria after the war. He told me that they had to live on peas for a year just to survive. Joe Zawinul, one of the greats. We'll miss him certainly. Let's see here. Hal Galper videos. Yes, Hal Galper. Very underrated guy, but certainly you watch his videos here that I did with him. Fantastic teacher. I got to hear Hal with Cannonball and with Phil Woods. And you should check out Hal Galper. Freddie Hubbard. Oh boy. I heard Freddie many, many times in person. Very lucky. And hung out with him a little bit. And I never interviewed him. I just hung out with him in various situations. And of course, his later years were really troubled, really difficult. He screwed up his lip. That was kind of it for such an incredible player, man. I hate that, one of the things I do that I hate is I use too many words, incredible. I keep saying, sometimes when I'm doing these spontaneous things, that's the first thing that comes to mind because it is incredible, but I'll try to do better. When I write, I can rewrite, but when I'm spontaneous, sometimes I wish I had better grasp of the language spontaneously. Pharoah Sanders, woo. Wow. I saw Pharoah's group in 68 at the Vanguard. It was the group with Lonnie Liston Smith. I'm a huge Lonnie Liston Smith fan, both for his music with Pharoah and his band called the Cosmic Echoes. In fact, one of the greatest concerts I ever saw in 1974, a triple bill at Carnegie Hall. It was Doug Karn, Lonnie Liston Smith and the Cosmic Echoes, and Carlos Garnett. And Doug Karn put out 2 or 3 recordings on the Black Jazz label, a couple of them with his then wife, Jean Karn, that I still go back to this very day. I love Doug Karn's music. And Lonnie Liston Smith, check him out, really. It's not just smooth jazz with Lonnie Liston Smith. So seeing him with Pharoah, that band with Leon Thomas, was it Idris Muhammad on drums? I don't know. So when people ask me my favorite musicians, I don't know. And there's so many. Different days, different things. What's your favorite recording? I don't know. I go through favorites at different. What's your favorite movie? So if you ask me, who's your favorite child? I only have one child, my daughter Leila. She is my favorite child. But yeah, Leon Thomas. Yeah. Great musician. He was a yodeler. And then I got to hear Pharoah a bunch of times. John Hicks, one of my favorite pianists for I guess in the 80s and the 90s. He worked with the rhythm section of Walter Booker and Jimmy Cobb, and sometimes with Idris Muhammad. And they would work with Pharoah. What an incredible combination. Once again, there's some stuff on my channel here. Whenever I find that stuff, I post it. I think fantastic music. So a lot of people, Pharoah, he's really outside. He could do that, but he plays inside as well. A lot of his recordings are beautiful ballads. Oh man, Charlie Rouse, beautiful man. Another friend of mine that we lost. I was once working on a tribute to Thelonious Monk. It appeared in Downbeat in the 70s. So I was interviewing a lot of people, and I had Charlie Rouse and at separate times, and Frankie Dunlop, who both played with Monk, came to my house to do interviews. And I remember when Charlie Rouse came over. I had known him from the clubs and stuff, and I worked on a project called Jazz Theater Workshop he was involved with that a little bit. But he came to my house to talk about Monk. And before he came over, I was listening, and when he arrived, I was listening to crescendo and decrescendo, crescendo and decrescendo. The thing that Ellington did at Newport 58, where Paul Gonzalez takes 27 choruses, incredible solo. Once again, I use the word incredible. A very good solo. Anyway, here I am. Charlie Ross is coming. I turn on the music, and I got it turned up really loud. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, okay. I opened the door. There's Charlie Ross. I said, oh, I'm sorry, man. How long you been knocking? He said, oh, about 5 minutes. Okay. Well, he came in. We hung out. He told me a great story about Monk and Timothy Leary. Speaking of psychedelic experiences, once again, another story that's available. Charlie Ross is just a beautiful person. Really beautiful cat. COVID-19 and its impact on the jazz community. Well, a lot of people are going to die. I'm sorry. A lot of people are going to die in all communities. Especially, I mean, I'm 70. I'm in I'm in an at-risk group. I'm in pretty good health, but who knows? We never know in this life what's going to happen. And it's very sad. I'll tell you, there are two parts of it. One is people getting sick and some dying. And then the other part of it is the economic aspect of it, is how it's going to affect our community. I don't know about you, but like, I live check to check. I do this, and as a freelancer, I don't have any backup. I don't have any savings. I mean, I'm sorry now I live my life the way I did in a way because I never saved any money. So I have no money. I have no insurance policy. And now I have no income at all practically. I'm not worried about it because I'm a survivor. I'll find a way, to go forward. But for people who make their living playing music and there's no gigs, very, very difficult times. I'm sure yesterday there was a benefit, online benefit, comedy. I forget the name of it, but it was a bunch of comedians doing webcasts from their homes, asking for contributions for fellow comedians who aren't working. Albert, Albert Cooper, you're a doctor on the front lines. My goodness, man, I'm so grateful for what you're doing. You're putting your life on the line here. I mean, the doctors and nurses and responders, they are the people who are making a difference. They're saving lives. I won't talk about the ones on the other side who are causing people to die, but there are many, many wonderful, great people in this country who care and are doing something. And those are the people that we have to really give our thanks to. Clark Terry was a good friend of mine. A guy that I used to know was Clark Terry's protege. So I spent a lot of time with Clark Terry in the 70s and 80s. Whenever he had a gig, I would go. Clark Terry, first of all, one of the best trumpet players who ever lived, period. I mean, this guy knew his way around the horn and able to play in any situation. He was, after he left the Ellington Band in the 50s, he was a studio musician in New York. Those guys, during that period, they'd go in there, they'd work like 6 or 7 sessions a day and just go in there and read that music down. They never saw it before. They'd look at it for a second, boom, they played it perfectly. Clark was very close to Quincy Jones, and Quincy Jones produced a recording some of you may know, a rock and roll recording by Leslie Gore called It's My Party. And Quincy Jones produced that session, and Clark Terry plays trumpet on there. Little known fact, little known piece of trivia. And of course, Clark led great groups. He he was ill for a number of years near the end of his life, but then it didn't change the person he was, and and people loved Clark Terry. Couldn't help but love him. Love his music. Still listen to it. Serenade for to a Bus Seat. One of the great recordings. Let's see here. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here in a few minutes. I'm going to be doing these things every day. Uh, Albert, I don't know if Wallace was Miles Davis' heir. I mean, it's like for me, Miles was the Picasso of jazz, and there was never another Picasso, and there'll never be another Miles. But certainly, a lot of Wallace came from Miles. Jazzvideoguy@gmail.com is my email. Um, P and Formico here in Spain. We gather. Window at 8 day. We give. Yeah. We gotta take care of each other. That's the only way we're gonna make it here. Uh, and we cannot count on any government really to help us anymore. Uh, I have no idea what's going to happen in terms of the economics of this whole thing, but I'll tell you one thing: uh, people, as long as there's people on this planet listening to music, they're going to be listening to jazz because jazz is a very, very powerful form of communication that reaches people in a way that not many things do. And once you hear it, once you got into it, it stays with you forever. I mean, it touched me. I saw Louis Armstrong on the Ed Sullivan Show, which is a variety show back in the 50s in the United States. I was 8 years old, and like I wanted to like go into the TV screen and become part of that. I mean, that spirit. 62 years later, I'm still into it. I mean, and I was a serious listener by the time I was a teenager. Hello, Ghana. Blessings to my friends in Africa. Um, I played the trumpet when I was a kid. Never very good, but uh, began to get into it. Who would have thought that when I grew up, I would become a writer and get to know all these people that I listened to, like Sonny Rollins and Dizzy Gillespie and Maynard Ferguson and Joe Henderson. Wow. And then I would become the jazz video guy. I mean, wow. So I'm blessed. And the reason that I do this, the thing that I do is because I love this music. I want other people to check it out. And our community, it's a very, very special community of people who care about each other and take care of each other. I'll close with something that, when I first came to New York City, uh, Fela Kuti, yes, I love Fela Kuti, especially the recordings he did with Ginger Baker. When I first came to New York in the late 60s, and I started to hang out at the clubs, and I got to know some of the musicians, and because up to that I was just listening to the music and seeing the occasional live thing, but being on the scene and getting to know people, one thing that really struck me, well, two things that really struck me. One, in the kitchen of the Vanguard, which is where the musicians would hang out, whether or not they're playing there, and the love and the humor and everything they had for each other was really special. That really grabbed me. The other thing was that when something happened to someone, musicians took care of each other. If someone was sick, they'd have these incredible benefits for the musicians to pay their expenses. And 40, 50 people would show up just to help. And they'd raise money. And this happened over and over again I guess it still happens. I'm not in New York anymore. But so this is a community of compassion, caring people. And let's face it, not everyone's going to be able to listen to jazz. It requires a desire in the beginning, to check it out. It might be a little bit different. There's so many different ways, so many different forms of jazz, and its umbrella that talks about different types, that speaks of different Brazilian jazz, jazz rock, straight ahead, Latin jazz, so many different varieties, acid jazz. Who knows how people what the door, the window that opens and someone gets into it, and then they listen to it and it becomes part of them. And playing it is difficult. It's not not many reach that place where you can tell who it is by their sound, by just one or two notes. You know, when I hear Ben Webster or Coleman Hawkins or Lester Young or John Coltrane or Sonny Rollins or Sonny Stitt, one or two notes, I immediately know who it is. And same thing with a phrase or two, hearing that. That type of individual expression is something that makes jazz unique. And a lot of people strive for that. And it's very, very difficult to say that, to do that. And people spend their lifetimes doing it. Gary Bartz told me, he said, man, Gary Bartz is a fantastic musician, wonderful, wonderful person. Blessings to you too, Dave Frank. I've known Gary, since 1969. I mean, he's a great musician. He once told me a few years ago, he said, this music, I've been studying it all my life. I really need a second lifetime to really learn how to play it. And I think you'll find that true. I mean, Michael Brecker, Sonny Rollins, continuous practicers. I mean, sadly, Sonny had to stop because he had some respiratory issues. Michael left us, but I knew both of these guys, and I know that most of their waking hours are spent just practicing, getting better, want to get to the next place, never satisfied. And that's something else about jazz that has inspired me in my work as a filmmaker, as a writer. Not to be stagnant, but to continue to learn and to work and practice. So that's going to be it for today. I'll be back in about 24 hours with some of the stuff that I couldn't remember today. I got to dig up that Max Roach story. It's a good one. And look forward to your comments and your participation. Tell your friends. And we'll see where this goes. If this turns out, to be a regular thing, people like it, and we get some numbers here, I might take it to the next phase and use some more, to take 2 or 3 people at once via Skype and broadcast that through YouTube. But let's hold off for a minute and see where that goes. So please, everyone, stay safe. Don't listen to people who say, this is no more serious than the flu. It's a lot more serious than the flu. We got to take care of each other. And part of that is by sequestering ourselves. And when we go out, I know I'm wearing gloves, I'm wearing a mask. I went to the supermarket the other day. There was hardly anybody there wearing gloves or a mask. I don't know what it's going to take to get people to make that step, but we got to help each other. And this virus is a good test of humanity. It's going to change things. And I love Coltrane. This is my final note here. I love Coltrane. I never got to see him live. In the 60s, when I was a kid, Coltrane was above me. It was just too much. I couldn't figure it out in the early 60s. But then, I'm a baby boomer. Obviously, psychedelics have been part of my life. I heard A Love Supreme when I was tripping on psilocybin in 68. I think it was 69. And that opened up Coltrane, and then boom, I've never stopped listening to Coltrane since then. He's been a tremendous source of inspiration for me. I never got to meet him, but I've spoken at length with many people who have, including Sonny and Wayne Shorter, and don't worry about Wayne Shorter and Sonny Rollins, by the way. I'm sure they're secluded. They're not going to get COVID-19, hopefully, but I don't know. I hope not. I don't want to see anybody suffer. Bye for now. How do I turn this off? How do I end this? Oh my goodness. I forgot how to stop. Uh-oh. How do I stop? Oops. I forgot. Where's the stop button? Hey, how about here? That's not going to work.